Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the Walkthrough. I'm your host, Joe Macheca. Welcome in. Football season is 34 days away, almost at a month away from football. So we are so close to the start of the season. Players report for camp on Thursday. We will hear from head coach Shane Beamer, as well as get a full rundown of all of the players, as they will be having all of their media availabilities on Thursday. So that's going to be fun. Get to talk to everybody, make sure we get the full story on each room, each position, how every guy is feeling headed into the season. Again, they start camp on Thursday. They report for camp on Thursday, August 1st, and then camp is straight away underway as things go along with summer football. So welcome in, everyone. Jeremy Jones checking in. Jeremy, how we doing? Appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Got a lot to get to. As I mentioned, Birdies with Beamer was this week. William Jones checking in as well. How was it going? But yeah, so Birdies with Beamer was this week. I had the privilege and honor of playing in that again. So shout out to Michael Debates and all of the SIDs at South Carolina for putting on the event. It was awesome, even though it got cut a little short. It was a great day out there on the golf course, and it was really good time. And you know, we got some really good stuff from coaches. And obviously Shane Beamer talked, and I have some clips tonight that I want to break down. Most importantly, the offensive line depth is one of the things we're going to hit on tonight. I asked Coach Beamer about it because the offensive line was one of the things last season that South Carolina was missing. I mean, you were banged up, and again, we knock on wood here. You were banged up, and you had to have guys, really step up, right? So the depth of the offensive line, it's crucial for any team. But then when you had as many injuries as South Carolina did last season, right, it's going to be a topic of conversation for this season. And now you should have a lot of guys on campus when you factor in the Cam Pringle, Josiah Thompson, Blake Franks of the world. You should have a lot more depth. And I'll be going through a full list of all that, and also I'll get to what Coach Beamer had to say as well on the offensive line. But again, it's such a key piece, and I'll be breaking that down further once we get to Coach Beamer's comments as well. Another thing that Coach Beamer said, Mike Yuva asked him actually, wrapping up SEC Media Day coverage, and how he feels, his team is going into summer camp. And then also, I mean, Shane talks about, what the difference is between this year's team and last year's team, right? This is the SEC, and we'll get into that. But being not far off is kind of a good spot to be in, especially in the SEC. So I'll get to that as well. And then also, Mike Shula was out of the coaching staff. I do want to talk about that. And then there's also a big recruiting weekend, plenty to get to there as well. But again, welcome in. Patrick Martis checking in. Andy Hall as well. What's up, guys? How we doing? Hope your Sundays are going well. Again, this is the walkthrough, so appreciate everyone tuning in. But to kick it off again, I do want to start with the offensive line. There's a lot of guys in here, but then I asked Coach Beamer what he thought about the depth going into the year. So here's this clip from Coach Beamer earlier this week from Birdies with Beamer. Hey, Coach, your offensive line was a group that took, its fair share of bumps and bruises last season. How do you feel about the depth going into summer camp this year?
Yeah, I don't think you ever feel like it's enough, particularly at that position. You always want, a lot more than what you have. And last year was essentially I don't want to say worst case scenario, but the number of injuries we had, it wasn't like we had more injuries than what we've had in the past. What we had were a bunch of injuries at one core centralized position that all the injuries typically happened at. And Tree and Tro got out there as true freshmen and battled, and Marquis Anderson would have played last year as a true freshman, but he was never healthy. And Cason Henry was our starting right tackle and got hurt in game one, and our starting left tackle tore his knee up in the spring game and never even got to the season. So it was just one of those things that we clearly didn't have enough depth last season, but we went through some growing pains, but we're going to be better for it now. Those guys are a year older, a year stronger, a year healthier. We've added some freshmen that I'm really excited about, and the guys that have come in that we feel like can help us without a doubt here as we with Blake and Cam and Josiah, that we're going to try and get ready, being able to bring in some transfers like Aaron Parks and Kamar Bell and Torricelli Simpkins. I like the group. There's a solid group in there that I think have position flexibility between center guard tackle, whatever it might be. And the key for us is going to be get into August, and Coach Teasley and the rest of our offensive line guys getting in there and figuring out who are our top guys and who we can go win SEC football games with. But I like the talent in that room, and I feel like we have more depth and experience than what we had in there last year. Now we got to do a great job of staying healthy.
Staying healthy and developing those guys, right? So I think that's huge. This offensive line is going to be the lifeblood of this team, right? You need to find a way to reinvigorate the run game is one thing, right? Because you weren't that good, and that was in large part because of the injuries you sustained on the offensive line. But one of the points he made was the core injuries at the core spots, right? So you had a bunch of different injuries with guys that, in different spots, right, where you have the guys that are stepping up aren't necessarily crossing over to that certain side of the line and stuff like that. So you didn't have the flexibility that you do this year, which I think is humongous, right? Because again, you got to get the run game going. Sean Elliott, you bring him in here to coach tight ends. And so you need to get the run game off the ground. So that's number one. So I'm going to run down some of the starters or some of the guys that I think, are in the mix, the depth that he is comfortable with, right? I've got Tree Babalata. I think he's going to have a big year this year. Needs to. I think he stepped up in a huge way as a freshman. Coming in against Georgia, it was huge. Him and Trevon Baugh as well. In fact, Tree and Tro are they're good cop, bad cop, if you will. Tree's the more outgoing one. Tro likes to keep to himself a little bit, but the Bash brothers, if you will, on the offensive line, two highlights in that class, in their own class, the two big offensive linemen. They were the start of the Great Wall of Carolina. I fully expect both of them to be starting and, make a very big impact on this squad. Another name I want to bring up is Vershawn Lee. I think Vershawn Lee is going to start. He's penciled in to be a really good player for this squad. But again, what we're talking about right now is, can the Great Wall of Carolina withstand the heat of the SEC? Because that's what it comes down to, right? This Great Wall of Carolina that you are now completing with the class of 24 and then now 25, or class of 23 and 24, I guess, with Cam Pringle, Josiah Thompson, and Blake Franks, right? And then you factor in Tree and Tro. Those guys are going to be insurmountable when you factor, just the depth that you need to have success in the SEC at offensive line. William says, Joe, do you have any pics of Dylan Stewart before and now heard he's bulked up? Yeah, that is on his Twitter. That was making the rounds. I believe it was Wednesday night is when he posted the progress update. I talked to Sterling Lucas at Birdies with Beamer, and Sterling said he was kind of giving him crap for thinking he was a model. But I mean, Dylan Stewart certainly put on a lot of weight. And my conversations with Sterling Lucas from Birdies with Beamer is that a lot of guys have put on weight. He wants his guys, being around like 260, depending on how tall and whatnot. But Des Yu was one of the bigger gainers, up to 260, which, I mean, Sterling, we can talk about the defensive end room too here really quick because, again, it's huge. It's huge what Sterling Lucas is doing. They have so much depth in that defensive end room that they are going to do like hockey shifts, right? When you're able to rotate, it's kind of weird how it works on the two sides of the football, right? Offensive linemen, they don't rotate at all. And then defensive linemen, you want them to be as healthy and as fresh as possible to make an impact, right? So when you have the depth that South Carolina does in this edge room, I mean, Gilbert Edwin, Kyle Kennard, Des Yu, Dylan Stewart, the list goes on. And then they've also got a couple freshmen as well, coming in. So there's a lot of potential with this edge room. Kyle Kennard, I think, is going to lead the way. Gilbert Edmonds, another veteran presence up in that room. So it's going to be scary. And now, I mean, when you factor in the transfers that the Gamecocks got, on the defensive tackle side of things, I mean, that is a whole complete defensive line, right? You restocked fully. And so now T-Rob, Coach Travion Robertson, and Coach Lucas are working together. I mean, same goes for the defensive tackles. I believe hockey shifts. You want as much depth as you can, and I think they feel really comfortable in it. I expect fully to see a lot of rotation at the defensive at the defensive line completely. Patrick says, no way we can't say the O-line won't be better. Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head there. It's got to be better if you want to find success. Last year, I mean, with all of the injuries and just the way that things were going, it's got to be better. It's got to be better. O-line should have a direct impact on the run game, 100%. It needs to. And I think bringing in Sean Elliott will be one of the bigger factors in this run game. Somebody who knows the offensive line well and knows how to coordinate a run game. He's going to be helping Dowell out quite a bit. And you need a good run game, at least for the sake of doing these running backs justice, because you have so many good ones in this running back room, right? You talk about, I mean, all the hype behind Rocket Sanders, right? SEC Player of the Year in 2022, or SEC Running Back of the Year in 2022 is one of the best running backs in this conference. Don't knock Rocket, right? And he's fully healthy now too. I can remember, Shane saying that there are no injuries going into camp besides there is a freshman that banged up his knee. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But yes, so O-line should have a direct impact. Christopher Adam, check it in. Everyone thinks we got 4-8 this year. It's sad how many people are sleeping on SC, even with a broken O-line last year, how close some of those games were if there had been an O-line. I'm going to get back to this because it's a really good point. There is a really, really thin line between, winning 4 games and 6 games and 8 games if you're South Carolina. Coach Beamer talks about that, talked about that quite a bit at Birdies with Beamer, and just the theory of or being not far off, right? Because you are in this conference, you're playing with the best. You see what the best of the best is, and to be at a stage where you can be not so far off is a pretty good one, right? Obviously, everyone wants to be the best. Everyone wants to be Georgia, but that doesn't happen overnight, right? So being not far off is kind of your concession there. But I'll get back to this as well. I've got a clip loaded up for that. But Christopher Adam makes his prediction 8-4 or 9-3. Certainly a ceiling there. I think the ceiling is 8-4 and 9-3. And it's doable. I mean, it is doable. You're going to have to do a lot of work. You're going to have to stun some teams and then really shake up expectations, but certainly doable. Certainly doable. Craig says this may be the fewest preseason injuries we've seen in quite a while. Knock on wood. Knock on wood indeed, as we do always on this show, Craig. But I agree. I think, you got to survive summer camp, and there's going to be injuries with summer camp. And, that happens, right? But again, I think if you can survive camp without any of, again, knock on wood, without any of your superstars going down, you're going to be in a really, really good spot because we love this. I mean, this roster assembly has been great, and you should be excited about it, right? There's every reason to be excited about it. So I would tend to agree there. So yeah, again, back to my point about the offensive line, right? Going back through Vershawn Lee, obviously, guy Kamar Bell is one of my sleepers. I think Kamar Bell is going to see a lot of playing time. He played big football at FAU. He was at Michigan, I believe, beforehand. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, Kamar Bell, he's going to be a big transfer. I think he's not a pushover transfer, as we've seen in the past. And I'm not saying you're purposely recruiting pushover transfers, if you will. But again, I think this is one guy that what you are expecting to get, you're going to get and more. I think he's going to compete for a starting job, and at the very least be in the 6 to 7 guys that are on the edge. If you're not in the starting 5, it's number 6 or number 7, right? Certainly going to see a lot of them. Expect him to make his rounds. Ja'Kai Moore, another veteran guy that I have, competing for a starting job. He's been here, he's done that. I expect big things from him. It's time for Ja'Kai Moore to step up. And I think he's going to be in the mix as well. Torcelli Simpkins is another interesting name in that room. Torcelli Simpkins is interesting because, again, he's making the jump up from the Division II level from FCS. So Simpkins is going to be, it's going to be interesting to see how he makes that adjustment. At South Carolina, we've seen players make the adjustment really, really well. So I think Simpkins can compete. He's got all the intangibles, and everything's trending in the right direction. So I think, Torcelli Simpkins is a guy that's certainly in the mix, started offensive line. And Casey Henry is the last name on my list that's, in the mix or could be starting. Casey Henry, he comes from Marietta, Georgia, redshirt sophomore now at this point. He's been banged up. I mean, you lost him at the start of camp last season, right? So you didn't get to see much of him. He's been rehabbing it, working hard to get back on the field. Casey Henry, I think, if he can stay healthy, man, he can be a really big impact on this offensive line. And then you have the 3 freshmen, right? Cam Pringle, Josiah Thompson, and Blake Franks. It's going to be really interesting to see how quickly those guys can get on the field and how quickly those guys can adapt to the SEC, right? Because getting on the field is one thing. Getting on the field is where you provide yourself in a situation of need. And then going to that, right? I think slowing it down, right? Getting on the field is one thing, but then slowing it down and being able to play at an elite level in the SEC is another, right? So I fully expect all three of those kids, Blake, Cam Pringle, Josiah Thompson, and Blake Freggs, all to make an impact at one way or another, whether it be on the field or providing competition like in the room. It's pivotal, right, to have all three of those guys, and they're all hungry, and I think they're all capable of making an impact this season. So to answer the question we got here is, can the Great Wall of Carolina withstand the heat of the SEC? We're gonna have to see, but inside the building, they're certainly confident in the depth that they have, and I'm sure there's a couple guys that have missed that they're really confident about. And we're about to see, right, once summer ball kicks off or summer camp kicks off on Thursday, we're about to see, who's starting to make ground and who's working into the starting lineup. It's all going to come full picture here. And Williams is Josiah Thompson. Yeah, I expect big things from him. He's out of, obviously Cam Pringle's pretty big kid, but Josiah Thompson, if you talk about what the weight room has done for somebody, I mean, and Dylan Stewart too, William, you brought that up as well. But yeah, Josiah Thompson and Dylan Stewart are two guys that have been making huge gains in the weight room, and all the freshmen too. Michael Smith as well. I've been hearing big things as well. So Wyatt Williams says, looking forward to seeing how we shake out at linebacker. Room looks much improved, which is crazy to say with Stone and Pup leaving. Yeah, I know. Two big factors in your linebacker room. And now you were able to restock a little bit in that linebacker room, and you feel comfortable. I was asking Clayton White about how he feels in the linebacker room, right? And he's confident about it, right? Because the depth at linebacker can go so far as well. And so I think with your depth at linebacker and everything that they have added, I mean Bangley Kamara, um, Demetrius Knight, and then you mix that in with a bunch of stud freshmen with Fred J.R. Johnson and Wendell Gregory is who I was referring to. Huge, absolutely huge for the program. And so I mean, whenever Debo Williams has control of the ship, you should be confident. I think everyone is telling us that this linebacker room is going to be just fine. And I know there is concern because of what you lost, but I certainly agree with the coaches when they say that this linebacker room should be pretty good. And so, yeah, Craig Godwin says somehow we start 3-1, which means you either beat Kentucky or LSU. I just think winning in Lexington gives you the optimism for the season. Lose that game and fans start losing it. Yeah, absolutely, Craig. 3-1 is huge. You have to beat one of the two, and they're very winnable games. Very, very winnable games. And so this Kentucky one, is it a must win? Like, I'm asking realistically. And so, like, is this Kentucky game a must win? I think so. Like, as early on in the season, and so I mean, it's huge. It's an ABC kickoff, and then I mean, if you can't get it done against Kentucky on the road, you have to do it against LSU. You really have to do it against LSU. So, I think it's huge, and this schedule is a gauntlet again, and I'm going to talk about it here. I've got a quote from Coach Beamer, just talking about how you're not far off, right? Again, I mentioned that at the top of the show, something I was going to bring up, but being not far off means that you're within striking distance. You just need to get the job done in the fourth quarter, but it still means you're a good team, is what I'm getting at. Craig says, I think Thompson starts by week 3 or 4. He's just too talented. Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked. I really wouldn't be shocked if Thompson is starting by week 3 or 4. But again, there's so much depth, right, Craig? So we'll see. We're going to see as summer camp kicks off and everything like that. We'll start to see the depth and where Thompson and everybody else shakes out. Craig also says the linebackers are so big. Seems like all of them are 6'2", 335 and can run like the wind. Exactly. It's prototypical Clayton White linebacker. I tell you what, prototypical Clayton White linebacker. He wants his linebackers to be able to cover the field more. And not to ding on Stone or Pup. Both those guys were playing with injuries last year as well. But being able to cover the field is one thing that goes a long way, especially in this conference, right? So your linebackers have to be able to cover the field if you want to find success. I agree completely with you, Craig. Switching lanes a little bit, did want to talk about the notion of not far off, right? And Coach Beamer talked about it in Birdies with Beamer. So I'm going to pull this clip and just talk about that, right? Being this close in games and what that means for your program. So here's what Coach had to say.
I would say that I agree. We're not far off. I said that in Dallas, and I meant it. It's not coach speak. It's a thin line. And you look at every game in this league. We're the toughest conference in America, and every game in this league pretty much comes down to the fourth quarter. We've got to find more way. We got to find ways to make more plays in the fourth quarter than what we did last season and be able to finish games. But the way that we've recruited, the players that have come into our program from the transfer portal this year, we're a year older. We went through some growing pains last season, but I'm most excited just because of the people that we have in our program, Mike. They're hungry. They were not happy with last season, and we've got a core group of older players, leaders that came back for another season because last season left a bad taste in their mouth. And it wasn't they have something to prove. I think they realize how close we are. And, we're not in the moral victories, but you look at some of the things we were able to do last season is proof that we're not that far off. Now we got to coach better and play better, but I feel like we've made the adjustments to take another step this year and excited to get started about that.
Yeah, as you should, right? Being not far off is exactly where you want to be. If you're trying to revitalize a program such as South Carolina that's had all of the success that you have in the early 2010s. So I firmly agree, right? So there's a lot from just that little clip there that you can take from it, right? I think the thin line is a good point. In the fourth quarter it's where you got to get the job done. But there were so many games last year where you just couldn't do it, right? But you were this close against really good teams, right? So how do you narrow that gap, right? How do you keep the focus in the fourth quarter when it matters the most, week in and week out, right? Because every single game in the SEC is going to go to the fourth quarter, right? You're going to be playing good teams. If you want to win, it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. The schedule is hard. It is hard. It's not easy in the SEC. So if you are making the game within the last 15 minutes, it means you have a chance to win. By all means, it means you have a chance to win. Does it mean you should win? Not necessarily. But again, if you can deduce it down to the fourth quarter, I think that's huge. Absolutely huge. And shows again, you're not necessarily that far off. You're within striking distance of, being one of the top teams in your conference. And with that stems momentum too. If you're winning games in the fourth quarter, momentum is a huge thing in this conference, right? We talk about it quite a bit. And so momentum is huge. And when you can win games in the fourth quarter, it goes quite a long way. Again, but so this schedule is not easy. It's not easy, but this team needs to prove that they are not far off, right? It's the toughest conference in America right now. Everybody's good. William Jones says Georgia killed us off the edge. Yeah, I know. It comes down to the offensive line, and I think Dowell too is going to do a better job of scheming for better defensive lines, right? I think you have more options in your backfield, at least to scheme around some of these defensive tackles and defensive linemen that you're seeing on a week-to-week basis, right? So it's huge. And so you have to. Oh, and so William was talking about the 3-3-5 and just defensively. Yeah, I don't think they're going to stay with the 3-3-5 as much. Again, I think they're going to rep a lot in nickel because you're talented in nickel. You've got a lot of DBs that can roam. 3-3-5 is not necessarily something that I could see them working with as much for sure. But again, if you're South Carolina football, your whole goal this year is to prove that you're not far off, prove that you are still, a relevant team in the SEC, right? Because if you take a step back this year, not good. It's not good at all, right? It just takes you further from what you were and further from the mission of being an SEC champion and making the college football playoff. So you can't take a step back this year. And taking a step forward, I think in this conference with this schedule proves that you are not far off. Like, yes. But you need to get to 6 wins at the very least, right? And then now, again, the thin line that Coach Beamer was talking about in his press conference was that thin line can be the difference between 4 wins, 6 wins, or 8 wins, maybe even 9 if you factor in a bowl game, right? Um, it's huge, and I think there are a lot of teams on this schedule that if you play up to your truest potential and everything, like everything's clicking, the game management's right, you're no dumb penalties, you're forcing turnovers, everything is going according to plan, you can beat a lot of teams on this schedule. And any given Saturday, absolutely. And minus my stigma against noon kicks on the road in conference, I think you can win a lot of games. Um, it just comes down to that thin line. Who wants it more? And finding ways to get over that hump, and really do it justice, right? Win football games and do the darn thing, plain and simple. So that's what this season is going to boil down to, for South Carolina. And again, that is pretty much that's all the coverage, or most of the coverage breakdown from from Birdies with Beamer. I wanted to thank Michael Debates and the SIDs for setting it up. It's huge, absolutely humongous. So I appreciated the golf and conversation on Thursday. Another thing I wanted to get to before I got ready to wrap things up here, the addition of Mike Shula to the coaching staff, I think, is huge. It's kind of being slept on a little bit. Mike Shula is going to be huge for this staff because he can do a variety of different things, and also, I mean, he has tons of NFL experience, and it's something that this coaching staff really has been as of late, or something that you've seen on this coaching staff as of late is all of this NFL experience, right? All of this NFL experience. So, it does numbers because, the NFL experience essentially goes where NIL can't. You see it with Sterling Lucas, Travian Robertson. Mike Shula is a big part of the NFL experience and developing guys to be NFL players. That's part of it. And when you can develop guys to be NFL players while they're still in college, it's huge. It's huge. Absolutely huge. WJM4 says Spalding as a healthy nickel will help. Yeah, I agree. David Spalding's a dog. 100% agree with you there. Craig Godwin says we have enough tackles and linebackers to play 4-3, maybe 3-3-5 in certain situations. Yeah. And trust your defensive line. And I think that's what, they plan on doing. And Clayton White, I again, in my conversations with him at Birdies with Beamer, he said, every defensive coordinator wants to be confident in their defensive line. And when you can be, you have that much more confidence in the rest of your defense because it starts at the defensive line. So I think there's a lot of confidence, at the line of scrimmage for this defense again. And as you should, you restocked, you've got some dogs, everybody that you've wanted on this defensive line is pretty much there for you. So this is going to be a big year. I think you get a full pass rush. You should be able to stop the run. It's going to be huge, but trusting the defensive line is something that, it's kind of a rarity because again, you tend to have, some doubts or some holes on the defensive line, and that can lead to not stopping the run, not being able to get a pass rush, and just more problems, not fitting right, not fitting the run game right, breaking loose. I mean, trick play, anything, right? If your defensive line isn't doing their 1/11th, you have a problem. And so when you can be confident in that, there's so much more benefit to you. Cola says any recruits to be watching to pop? No, but they're not necessarily as of late. But again, you can find Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell's coverage. They're doing a great job. They have your full visitors list. There was a very big recruiting weekend this weekend on campus, the summer cookout. You had a bunch of 25s committed. Pretty much everybody that had been committed within the recent weeks was at this cookout. Anthony Addison, Shed Surratt, Kobe Saki Pra, big names at this cookout. Again, to have the committed guys there, I think is huge because, again, we saw it with Dante Reno. We saw it with all the other guys in this class, Cam Pringle. These guys recruit each other, right? And so when you have committed guys there, look out, right? Because there's no better ambassador of your program than somebody who really, really wants to be there. But Cola, in terms of anybody in particular, I know Samari Smoke Matthews was on campus. He's a 2026 big recruit there. If you can land him, DB, be a huge addition to that defensive back room. But again, all of that coverage, you can subscribe to GC for just $1 for your first month and get all of Chris and Wes's coverage. They've been doing a great job. But to get the full rundown, feel free. Chris and Wes do a great job over there on Gamecocks, again on our website, GamecockCentral.com, or on the Insiders Forum. Another reason to be subscribed to the best website around. So VK says, William, they said it will be flex 4-2, 3-3, 3-3 might be good to get a blitz package in. Yeah, and they trust these linebackers too. Bam Martin Scott's another one that's really going to help with the run game. Bam Martin Scott can cover a lot of ground, and I think he's going to be used as such. So you got two veteran guys, or you got 2, 3, 4 veteran guys at the top of this linebacker room, and then you have a bunch of freshmen who are just, I mean, they really, really like what they're seeing out of Fred J.R. Johnson and Wendell Gregory from the time being, right, and from workouts. Now, they hit the field for practice for the very first time, on Thursday. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how all that pans out. Christopher says, Adams, any comments on Lane Kiffin troll against USC? Not necessarily. I mean, I think Lane Kiffin is really, really, really good at that. I think, Juice Wells needed a little pump me up, wanted a little generate a little bit of interest. So he wanted to announce that he was coming back or that he was healthy. I know Juice had surgery again in the spring. So he's been dealing with more injuries, over at Ole Miss, didn't play in the spring game. But so I mean, I think it was more of Juice getting himself going and wanting to tweet and create a little, buzz for himself. The fact that he was activated again. So, but no, I mean, Lane Kiffin is just doing his job at that point. I mean, he's just adding gas to the fire as he normally does. But usually, I mean, Coach Kiffin, I mean, if he's not starting it, he's certainly pouring way more gas on it than he should. And obviously people are fired up about it. So, I think it just makes that game way more interesting. Gives you somebody to hate, gives you somebody to love. That's sports, man. That's the best part about it. So I firmly agree. I don't know. Now again, Lane Kiffin, he is trolling, yes. But again, he's doing a pretty good job of it, making you interested. So I don't know. I have, compliments, and then also, like, stick to football, right? So, opinions on both sides there for sure. Martin says defense has to play well. They will start to be relied on to beat LSU and Kentucky while the offense is figuring itself out. Martin, you're hitting the nail on the head here. Completely agree. Yeah, and the run game is going to be a big part of Kentucky and LSU as well. Because again, you need your run game to be really, really, really good from the jump, right? And so when your run game, you can find success in your run game in week 1 and 2, you know what you have to do to get the job done after that, right? So I think it's huge. It really is. To get the defense, but again, you're right. They have to start hot and they have to play together. They have to play together if they're going to want to find success. William Jones says, VK, yes, Dylan Stewart, 4.25, her the QB. Yeah, it's going to be huge. He's going to be really, really fast off that edge. Quarterback nightmare stuff, man. I'm telling you, it's going to be big. William Dean checking in. How's it going, my guy? Hope your Sunday's going well. Again, William Jones, hope Juice Wells does well, except at the South Carolina game. William Jones with a level-headed take here. Obviously, you wish the guys the best, even though his ending at South Carolina wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. But William Jones with a little humanity here on the Sunday evening. Now, I can imagine when Ole Miss strolls into town, William, a lot of other people will feel differently. But again, I think that South Carolina game, you're right. It's going to be heated, and it should be a night game. I believe it is a night game. So, it's a flex one right now, but you want it to be a night game because obviously you got a little bit more time to tailgate, make that place a little bit louder as well. So, yeah, huge. And Jeremy says Dylan Stewart's body transformation is like, wow. Yeah, it really is. I mean, and that's how it should be. I mean, all those guys, right? I mean, Dylan Stewart's one of the guys that, posted about it. Now, every guy in that building when they're freshmen, getting on the proper diet, eating what you should, lifting, running, doing all that stuff that the D1 football players, especially in the SEC, be doing. It's huge. I mean, you see it, it's night and day. I mean, I'm sure Josiah Thompson has if he had taken before and after, it would have been shocking. Cam Pringle as well. All these offensive linemen putting on a bunch of weight. Mazio Bennett has also put on a bunch of weight. I saw him at camp on Friday. Mentioned that he'd put on some weight as well. And he's like, yeah, gotta get stronger, getting ready for camp. So it was huge. A lot of guys putting on weight as is the season to be doing so. So again, yeah, so that is pretty much it. Anybody else? I'm going to hit and add really quickly. But if anyone has anything else before we wrap things up, be sure to throw it in the comments. But first off, this week's episode of The Walkthrough is brought to you by Andy Luedecke of MyPerfectFranchise.net. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy? Andy can help. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirement, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help you if you have any questions about business ownership. Contact Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. You can also give him a call. For those listening, 404-973-9901. Once again, contact him at Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. And over the phone, 404-973-9901 for all of your franchise needs. So that'll do it for this week's edition of The Walkthrough. Appreciate everyone tuning in on this Sunday night. Again, a couple things. We have 34 days till football kicks off against Old Dominion. It's that close. Hootie and the Blowfish will be in town to kick off the season. Super excited for that. If you have tickets, I'll see you there. But yeah, super excited for that. And yeah, I mean, we're that close. And again, Thursday, tons of fun content coming for Gamecock Central this week. We have obviously media days coming up on Thursday. So the whole staff will be out there gathering as much info from these guys as humanly possible. So a lot of fun stuff coming to GC this week. Be on the lookout for all of it. We'll have all the content as we normally do. And last reminder, for now, you can subscribe to Gamecock Central for just $1 for your first month. $1 for your first month. You can find that link on GamecockCentral.com. We're running the special preseason football special. So get over there, take advantage of that. Get all of our content, all of our premium content. Chris, Wes, Jack, Mike Yuva, everyone doing a great job. And again, Chris and Wes have all of the updates from this big recruiting weekend. I tried not to give too much of it away because, again, premium content, but you can subscribe for just $1 for your first month. See all that content. Figure out who was on campus. Get the full scoop on GamecockCentral.com. But again, we'll have talking. I will see you guys at Talking Tuesdays as usual. Mike Yuva and I kicking back, talking some football as we normally do. But again, appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and enjoy the rest of the week. Football's right around the corner. Summer camp starting up this week. Be ready. We're almost there.